I honestly wasn't expecting the Luffy and ENERU fight to be nearly as good as it was, but especially the way it ended was truly impactful, which I can't wait to talk about. But before even talking about it, I wanted to quickly mention, if I didn't notice the parallels between Luffy and Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, before this, oh yeah, after this fight, but really this whole arc, I realized how similar they actually are, because Sun Wukong, obviously the Monkey King who ascended to the heavens to fight against the gods themselves, and here you have a monkey from the Blue Sea, as ENERU calls him. Of course, he says it quite disparagingly, but he calls him a monkey from the Blue Sea, and yet that monkey from the Blue Sea ascended to the heavens to fight against someone who fashions himself a god. And although ENERU will keep demeaning him and saying like, how dare you challenge me, you monkey from the Blue Sea, how dare you think you can take on God, that monkey is going to humble someone who fashions himself God. And I can't wait to talk about it because, again, I didn't think that this story would be nearly as impactful as it was, because there were points during the Skypiea arc that I wasn't necessarily feeling. I'm not gonna lie, like especially in that first half, I kind of understand why so many people have mixed opinions about this arc, but the way the second half of the arc went, and particularly the way it kind of closed out, I almost see the ending of this arc as the perfect conclusion to basically any One Piece arc. Like, just looking at that ending, phenomenal, and I can't wait to talk about it more. In this particular video though, I'm going to fixate in on just this fight because I realize there's so much I could talk about, but it's not even the fight itself. It's everything that happens around the fight. Even when I consider what happened right before this fight, you have a backstory. You have the Noland and Kagura backstory. And I talked about that backstory in my previous video, so I'm not really going to talk about it too much here. I'm just going to talk about some of the major takeaways because they are directly applicable to this conflict going on here. Because again, this fight isn't really that long, but it's technically the end of an over 400-year-long conflict. And even if you think about it, this conflict goes back hundreds and hundreds of years to even the Void Century, which is another thing I can't wait to talk about in another video, especially with what happens at the end of this arc, because it is just mind-blowing, especially with the implications on the world building and the poneglyphs and just the Void Century, all of that stuff. I'm going to save that for the next video. But again, the major history of the City of Gold, Shandora, has been they've been trying to preserve their history and show they exist. That's why they ring the bell. That's why they light the fire of Shandora, to proclaim the existence of the mighty city of Shandora. And that is why this fight in particular has so much added weight. Even when you look at how Luffy and ENERU view this gold bell, it is so vastly different because Luffy views it as it should be viewed. He wants to light the fire of Shandora. He wants to proclaim the existence of the City of Gold, that yes, Shandora exists. It's here in the sky. It has not been forgotten. And he wants to tell everyone who can hear the bell, including Cricket, Nolan's descendants, anyone who may hope in the City of Gold, yes, it's here. It's existed this entire time. So Luffy perfectly understands what that bell represents, whereas ENERU, on the other hand, only sees it as a way of magnifying his own might. Oh, wouldn't it be great if I had this bell? This bell that was the jewel of the City of Gold. I want it for me because I want to proclaim how great I am. So I kind of like how you have almost these two fighting ideologies. One person wants to use the bell for what it was meant to be used for, and the other wants to use it almost as a perversion of what it was meant to be. But again, over 400 years of conflict has led to this point, and Noland and Kagura's backstory, it did not end well for either of them. They both had horribly tragic ends. Neither really knew what happened to the other, and it would kick off 400 years of a horrible history, where you would have fighting between the Shandians and the Sky People, and you would have Nolan's descendants mocked and ridiculed, forever believing in the City of Gold. And here comes this monkey from the Blue Sea to ascend to the heavens and challenge God and end 400 years of conflict, and I love how all of that has been laid out. But now let me actually get into what kind of happens with the fight, because obviously you have Luffy running up the beanstalk. He's trying to get to ENERU, but the thing about ENERU is he knows, despite the fact that he tries to demean Luffy, you're just a monkey, how dare you challenge me? He knows from their last encounter, that monkey brought me to my knees. I do not want to fight him. I just need to keep him away. And I kind of like the way he rationalizes it in his mind, like, I am so far above you. I don't want to fight you. I don't need to fight you. But really, he kind of knows that, yeah, that monkey would humble him and defeat him. So he just tries to keep Luffy away, and Luffy keeps trying to get up. And one of the things I love so much about this fight is really, most of the fight is even before the actual final fight itself, with trying to get Luffy up to ENERU. Because again, ENERU knows he's not going to be able to defeat Luffy. He might try and lie to himself, but their last fight went so poorly for him that monkey brought him to his knees, so he threw the gold around his arm, so Luffy has this massive gold ball, and he threw him off the ship, and he thought, surely that is enough to stop him. But again, that is Monkey D. Luffy. He is not going to stop. He is not going to quit, because if there's one thing Luffy never does, it's give up. So even with a giant gold ball, he doesn't let that stop him. And you can just see ENERU is shocked to see this guy. He still is coming for him. He doesn't understand why he won't give up. But again, he is kind of annoyed with him, but also he's very scared of this guy. He may not want to admit it, but he is frightened of Luffy, because as much as he tries to prop himself up as an all-powerful, almighty god, he knows that that monkey from the Blue Sea could defeat him. And that scares him probably even more so than losing, is the fact that he's not untouchable. He's not really this all-powerful god if someone like Luffy could humble him. But again, ENERU is keeping him away. He's destroying parts of the beanstalk as Luffy is running up so he can't get close, or he's just directly hitting Luffy. Luffy can't get to him, so he needs help from other people. And I love how this arc, but particularly this final conflict, involves basically all three of the major groups fighting ENERU. You have some of the Shandians with Wiper and Isa. You have some of the Skypians, particularly Gunfall in this final fight, not to mention Conus and her father who helped out. And then of course you have the Straw Hats. But the thing is, Luffy, if he's even going to be able to reach ENERU, he's going to need help from everyone down below. And I love how they set that up. But again, at this point, ENERU really ratchets up the attacks. He is destroying Skypea with all of his thunderbolts, and he drops his massive attack on the Skypians' home, almost like he just nuked the entire Angel Island. Their homeland is gone. All the people looking on as their homeland was just destroyed are despairing. Because again, ENERU is going to wind up an even bigger attack to destroy everything. He believes it's his duty as God to eradicate everything from the sky. But here's where I think we get one of the best shots of this entire arc. It's definitely up there, because you have Luffy. He's just looking on at the destruction ENERU has caused. And he is dead serious, and I love these moments from Luffy. Sure, I love all the goofy, jokative moments from Luffy. They're fun to watch, and there's plenty of them. But these moments where he just gets ultra serious are very rare, but they really stand out. I think back to Arlong Park, for example. He's waiting for Nami to ask him for help, because he knows in that moment she kind of needs to go through it. She kind of needs to realize like she can't do it all on her own, and it's fine to get help from other people. And when she throws all sorts of insults at Luffy, she's like, I told you to leave, like why are you here? And she's just breaking down, and he's not saying a thing. He's just letting her kind of get these emotions out, and then she turns to him and she says, Luffy, help me. And again, he just has one of the most perfect responses. It's perhaps one of the most iconic moments in all of One Piece, at least one of the most iconic moments I've seen, where he just takes off his treasure, his hat, and he sticks it on her head, and he's like, yeah, of course I will. And then of course he goes and beats up Arlong. This moment here really reminds me of that, because Luffy is just looking out at all the destruction ENERU has caused. And I love the way that they animated, because he has that dead serious look in his eyes, and just the way that the wind is blowing through his hair. And the thing is, Nami at this point is like, Luffy, like, we gotta get going. Come on, let's ride the waver down. We can still try and escape. And he just turns and he looks at her dead serious, and he's like, I can't. Which she's definitely confused by, like, what do you mean? He says, I have unfinished business. Which again, she doesn't understand. She thinks it's about revenge for him. Like, wait, you really want to defeat ENERU that badly? Like, you want some sort of revenge against him? And Luffy, he kind of snaps at her to a certain extent, which he doesn't often do, but this just shows where his headspace is at. Because he's like, don't you understand? There's a gold bell up above. And Nami doesn't really get it, and Nami's someone who loves gold, but she thinks he cares about gold in particular, like because it has monetary value. She's not understanding how symbolic that bell is, but Luffy perfectly understands what that bell represents. Luffy, more so than really anyone here, understands what that bell represents. The only one who comes close is Wiper, because both of them have kind of, to a certain extent, inherited the wills of Kagura and Noland. Like, Luffy is the adventurer who has come in, and he's going to save the Shandians, the Sky People, much like Noland saved the Shandians from the plague a long time ago. But again, Nami's like, gold, like, Luffy, we don't need gold. Look at your arm. You've got a ton of gold on your arm. Like, we can leave. We don't need any more gold. And Nami to be saying that is just perfect irony, because again, Nami absolutely loves treasure. To Luffy, it's not about the gold. And he kind of yells at her like, you saw it. The city of gold. It was here. It was in the sky all along. Cricket's ancestor, he didn't lie. The city of gold existed. And I need to ring that bell because I need to let him know the city of gold is in the sky. Like, don't you understand? If I don't ring that bell, he may never know that the city of gold existed and is in the sky. He may keep searching in the blue sea until he dies. I need to do this. And I just love this moment from Luffy because he shows why he's the captain, why he's the leader, why he's the man who will become king of the pirates. Because he can see what so many people can't. He may not be the brightest character, but his outlook on the world is often the most clear out of all the characters you'll come across. And so he tells Nami, I can't let ENERU get that bell. I need to ring it, and I need to let people know the city of gold is here. And if that monologue by Luffy doesn't add even more stakes to this final conflict, I don't know what does. But I love the way he perfectly summed up in that moment, even without knowing all of the backstory about Kagura and Noland. He knows enough and he understands enough to be like, I know I have to do this. I just know if I ring that bell, the fighting will end. This 400-year-long conflict will end. And I even like how down below, we see Zoro. He's recalling what Luffy said to him way earlier in the arc, where Luffy is walking and he's excited about the City of Gold. But in particular, he's telling them about like, hey, didn't the City of Gold have this giant bell? Because Noland's logbook talked about a gold bell in the city. And Robin confirms like, yeah, it did. But Luffy's not thinking about it for any sort of monetary value. He's like, hey, I bet you if I ring that bell, Cricket down below will be able to hear it. And the thing is, I don't know how Luffy knows this for a fact. He just somehow knows it, but he's not wrong. It's entirely true. And the fact that he was so far ahead of everyone else here is actually kind of fitting because, again, as I've said, that's the man who's going to become king of the pirates. But Zoro recalls this story and he tells everyone below, he's like, yeah, Luffy's going after that gold bell. Like Nami, she'll try and bring him back, but he's not going to listen. Once he sets his mind to doing something, he's going to do it. And Robin's listening in like, yeah, he did say that. But certainly, given the circumstances, you would think he would forget about that. But what I love about this is it even shows Robin doesn't really understand Luffy nearly as well as other crew members. And it even shows that someone like Zoro in this moment, he knows his captain arguably the best out of any of the crew members. They have this close connection where so many times I love these moments where Luffy and Zoro will just share a look and they'll both perfectly understand what the other is thinking and what the other wants. I love that dynamic between the two of them, and even if he's not technically his first mate, I do kind of look at Zoro as like, yeah, he's the first mate. He's Luffy's oldest friend and comrade. They do share a unique bond on the crew. And again, we do go back to Luffy. He's still trying to get to ENERU. He can't. And this is when Nami has an idea where she sends a message down on a leaf to the people down below. She's like, okay, I need you guys to cut the beanstalk so that it heads west to where ENERU's ship is, so that Luffy and I can get up to him. So again, this part of the battle is really down to the people down below. And so Nami drops the leaf down below in hopes that they understand the instructions. What I love so much about this moment is we get this brief interaction between Nami and her captain, where she didn't really understand why this bell meant so much to Luffy, why he needed to get up there that much, but she trusts her captain. And in that moment, she says, okay, I'm going to give you a ride up with the waiver after they cut the beanstalk. And Luffy's kind of confused for a second, like, wait, you're going to help? Like, I thought you wanted no part of this. But she says, yes, I'll help you, but I need you to guarantee my life. Which at first I thought was a little weird, like there's no way Luffy can guarantee something like that. But Luffy says yes, and in that moment, what I love so much about this is whether or not Luffy can guarantee it, is the fact that Nami trusts Luffy so much that she takes his word, because when Luffy says yes, I promise you'll be safe. And even though Nami is not the most trusting person, in that moment she trusts her captain wholeheartedly. But again, the leaf falls and everyone down below understands the instructions, and Zoro rushes in to go and cut the beanstalk, and he does, but it doesn't fall yet, and Zoro gets hit by one of ENERU's attacks, so he's out of the fight. And then you have Usopp, he goes and he tries to fire some stuff. He can't really, but I love that he's actually trying. And then we get one of the best moments of the entire arc, if you ask me. Because here you have Viper, who's almost a little angry, like, wait, why does all this matter so much to that Straw Hat kid? I don't understand, like, don't you understand that we, the Shandians, are the inheritors of Kagura's wishes and will? We're the ones that are supposed to ring that bell. Why does it matter so much to that Straw Hat kid? And this is where Robin kind of tells him, like, well, 400 years ago, an adventurer told a lie. And immediately you hear Viper and he kind of perks up, like, wait, is she talking about Noland? But he doesn't say anything yet. And she keeps saying, but yet nobody in the Blue Sea believed him, and they mocked him, but his descendants believed him and they were mocked for 400 years, but yet they kept believing and searching. And you see Viper is starting to realize, like, oh my goodness, maybe these are Noland's descendants. Have they really believed this entire time? They've truly believed that my homeland existed. They believed their ancestor Noland all this time. The descendants of Kagura's best friend believed all this time, and they were ridiculed and mocked for believing that my homeland existed. And Viper starts to get emotional and realize, like, wait a second, this adventurer's descendant, what was his name? And Robin looks at him and she says, Mont Blanc Cricket. And in that moment, Viper realizes, like, wait, so his ancestor was his name Noland? And Robin confirms. And in that moment, it all makes perfect sense to Viper, because he realizes for 400 years, they kept believing. And Robin tells Viper why she believes Luffy wants to ring that bell, because Luffy truly believes if he rings the bell, that Noland's descendants, that Cricket, and everyone who needs to hear that bell will know that Noland didn't lie, that the city of gold was in the sky all along. And just Viper's reaction to it is perfect, because here you have this very stoic warrior and he's just breaking down because he realizes just the impact of everything that has happened. For 400 years in the Blue Sea, they've believed Noland's words, that Kagura's best friend's descendants, even though they were ridiculed and mocked, didn't lose faith. They believed in his homeland. They believed in Shandora. And then you have Luffy and his crew arrive, and Viper doesn't really understand. He just thinks that they're greedy, that they're trying to rob from his homeland. But to Luffy, he also wants to ring that bell because he wants to proclaim the existence of Shandora. He wants to light the fire of Shandora. And this is where Viper even exclaims, like, Great Warrior Kagura, is this a miracle? Like, that boy wants to light the fire of Shandora, and he is actually able to do it. And Viper understands in this moment, he wouldn't have been able to defeat ENERU, but this boy has come along, and he fully understands, and he has inherited the will of all the people in the past who wanted to light the fire of Shandora. And so Viper in that moment decides he knows what he has to do, and he starts heading towards the beanstalk. And we even do get a brief moment where the snake that was up here, it had been knocked out by ENERU. It wakes up, and this snake has been alive for over 400 years. It's the only living creature that remembers Noland and Kagura. It loved them. It was kind of like their pet to a certain extent, but it wakes up, and I believe it fully understands in that moment what it needs to do, and it rams into the beanstalk, and although it doesn't quite knock it over, you have to assume it helps a tiny bit. But either way, this is when Viper arrives, and he knows he's going to use the reject dial. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him. For all he knows, this is the thing that's actually going to kill him. But right before he's about to use the reject dial on the beanstalk, he's crying his eyes out because he's like, man, Noland's descendants down below, they've been so patient. They've believed all this time. And he uses the reject dial, badly hurting himself, but it's just enough to knock over the beanstalk, so it's falling towards ENERU's ship. And Luffy and Nami start riding up the beanstalk on this waver. It took an entire team effort from everyone down below, before Luffy even had the chance of getting to ENERU. So I like how their battle is now over with ENERU, and now it's all up to Luffy and Nami getting up there. So as Nami and Luffy are going up the beanstalk, and Luffy is getting dangerously close to ENERU at this point, you just see ENERU is starting to get desperate as he realizes, like, this Straw Hat guy, he's actually going to reach me. And again, he may try and play it up like he's God, he's untouchable and all this, and he may try and demean Luffy as just a monkey from the Blue Sea. But again, that monkey brought him to his knees earlier, and he knows deep down that that monkey can defeat him. But worse than even defeat him, can show he's not this all-powerful god. That monkey will be able to humble him. So at this point, ENERU is trying everything. He's trying to hit the base of the beanstalk. He's trying to destroy it so Luffy doesn't even have a chance of getting close. But again, I love this moment where Wiper, he knows ENERU can hear him, and he starts saying, "It's hopeless, ENERU. You can't bring down the history of Shandora. No matter how much you destroy, the land won't be beaten." And ENERU gets frustrated. He hears all this, sends down a powerful attack to Wiper. But the thing is, Gunfall heard Wiper's words, and he realizes how foolish they've been in this moment, as he's grabbing the earth underneath him, saying, "We should have never been fighting over this. How foolish we've been." But Wiper has just enough left in him to cheer on Luffy. He wants him to light the fire of Shandora, to ring that bell and proclaim its existence to the world. Because he knows, although he fought against Luffy multiple times in this arc, he knows that their hopes rest with Luffy. He's done his part to help Luffy, but it's Luffy who's going to be the one that's either going to win or they're all going to lose. And Luffy and Nami finally reach the end of the beanstalk, and they run out of room. And Luffy just thanks Nami and pushes her out of the way. He did say he would guarantee her safety. But he doesn't jump towards ENERU's ship. Instead, he jumps towards ENERU's strongest attack, this giant storm. He calls it a Raigo. And ENERU was going to use this attack to destroy the rest of the land. And ENERU thinks, like, certainly he won't be able to do anything in there. That storm will destroy Luffy. But Luffy confronts the storm head on. And this is where I love the irony of the moment. Because perhaps Luffy wouldn't have been able to do this. Obviously, rubber is an insulator of electricity. But really, the gold ball comes into play, because Luffy is able to swing that gold ball in the storm and disperse all the electrical charges, destroying his most powerful attack. And as ENERU is realizing, like, oh no, like that gold ball, I forgot about that. He's starting to realize that the very thing he gave Luffy is also going to be the thing Luffy uses to finally defeat ENERU. That his own demise will be the result of his actions. And Luffy destroys the storm, but not only does he destroy the storm, but the entire sky fills with light for everyone to see, and Luffy has brought the dawn. But he's not done quite yet. And ENERU is incredibly frustrated, and he's hurling even more insults at him, like, "How dare you destroy my Raigo, you monkey from the Blue Sea." And I love that as he's starting to feel less and less sure of himself, he's starting to hurl out more insult. He's starting to talk more and prop himself up as like, "I am God. How dare you? You can't touch me. I'm invincible." But deep down, he also knows that monkey is going to beat him. And I even love how Luffy starts talking to him. He has no respect for him. He's like, "I'm gonna ring you as well." And ENERU snaps like, "How dare you? I'm God. You can't talk to me like that." But Luffy doesn't care. And ENERU is frustrated. He winds up another powerful electrical attack. But again, at this point, it's basically hopeless. It doesn't affect Luffy. Luffy gets up close to him, kicks him in the face. And at this point, ENERU does have a last-ditch effort where he tries to stab him with the spear. And it seems to hurt Luffy to a certain extent. And ENERU thinks for a moment, like, okay, I've got him now. But Luffy starts to think of all the people who are counting on him. From Konis, but especially Isa. And I love the connection Isa and Luffy have, because here's this Shandian girl, who again, she didn't really know what to think of Luffy. She thought he was kind of weird when she first met him. But quickly, Luffy and Isa developed a close relationship, and I even love how after this fight, and I'll talk about it in my other video, after this fight, Isa says she wants to be just like Luffy, and she even does his attacks like Gum Gum Pistol and stuff like that, because Luffy inspired her, much like Shanks inspired Luffy. And there will probably be many more people as Luffy goes from place to place, liberating different places that he also inspires, much like Shanks inspired him. And I just love that dynamic, but Luffy thinks all this through and he jumps away, and ENERU thinks like, okay, he's won. But Luffy was just winding up his final attack. And he grabs hold of a cloud, and because he's rubber, he slingshots himself up. And the thing is, the attack that brought ENERU to his knees before was a rifle attack. But this time it's different, because this time not only does Luffy have more motivation, not only is ENERU basically at his wit's end, but Luffy also has that gold ball that ENERU gave him. It was supposed to be a detriment, but it's going to be the thing that ends up defeating ENERU, because he winds up his golden rifle. And he just absolutely fires one of the strongest, most powerful attacks I've ever seen from Luffy. I love the way it's animated because it truly shows how powerful this attack was. Just the sound and the speed and everything. It's too fast for ENERU, completely wrecks ENERU. He's knocked out of the fight. But what I love the most about this moment is when you realize Luffy wasn't even aiming for ENERU. Like, sure, he hit ENERU on the way to what he was truly aiming for, because behind him you see Luffy's aiming for the gold bell. Like, he may have hit ENERU on the way there, but he was aiming for the bell because he wanted to light the fire of Shandor to proclaim its existence to anyone who needs to hear it. And in my opinion, this is one of the best One Piece moments, because that gold ball that Luffy has with that golden rifle, it has ENERU on the end, and he hits the golden bell, lighting the fire of Shandor for anyone to hear. And what I love most about this is, as this particular episode is coming to an end, all Luffy says is, old guy, he's talking about cricket, can you hear it? The city of gold was up here the entire time. It was in the sky. And the bell rings, and it's just such a glorious sound for everyone to hear. Luffy has brought the dawn, he's defeated the storm, he's rung the bell, and in that moment Luffy broke the gold on his arm, defeated ENERU, and rung the bell, bringing the end to a 400-year-long conflict, and he once again proclaimed the existence of Shandora after 400 years. And he rung the bell, signaling to anyone who needed to hear that the City of Gold existed, that the fires of Shandora have not gone out. And as Luffy is falling, he just says one thing, can you hear it? The City of Gold was right here. It was in the sky. Luffy brought the end to a long 400-year-long terrible history. And everyone from the Skypians, the Shandians, the Straw Hats, anyone who needs to hear it, even Cricket way down below, they all just marvel at the sound. And they realize in that moment what Luffy has done. But anyway, I just absolutely love this fight. And the thing is, it wasn't even so much about the fight itself. It was just everything around the fight, between the history leading up to the fight, everything that the fight involved between the different groups helping each other. But I just wanted to talk about it. If you like this kind of video and you want to see more, particularly as I discuss other elements of the Skypiea arc, because there's a lot to discuss, I just wanted to discuss this particular fight, please consider liking and subscribing, and thank you for watching.